By resources, I mean, for example, land, property, technologies, and also new and renewable energies. In this sense, states have an obligation to adopt all the appropriate measures for ensuring the enjoyment of these rights, which means all the appropriate legislative, judicial, again, administrative measures, budgets, planning. I would like to theorize several possible ways for using in practice the CEDAW and the Maputo Protocol for addressing gender equality and environmental justice. And some inspiration can also be drawn from the experience of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and more extensively from the experience of the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, especially its General Recommendation number 37, by which the committee in 2018 has addressed climate change and, in that context, disaster risk reduction. So in practice, the CEDAW and the Maputo Protocol might help to tackle stereotypes as those related to women's vulnerability and those related to indigenous and rural women, whose knowledge can be crucial to be incorporated into the political and the scientific debate, for example, for preserving biodiversity and a number of resources as water, land, forests. The conception of the fair and equitable allocation of resources can also apply to states' budgets. So states' financial resources alone or in combination with access to financial credit can be used for supporting women's education, the acquisition of strategic and technical skills, and they can also be used for supporting sustainable activities, as for example, in sustainable businesses, as for example, agriculture, fisheries, aquaculture. This framework could be used for addressing the right to a fair and equitable pay. The state duty to protect can apply to international investment law, and I would like to suggest, for example, the incorporation of women's rights in specific non-precluded type measure clauses. And I would like to stress again how this framework can be helpful for ensuring and effective for ensuring the right to access to justice, the right to an effective remedy. Moreover, both tools provide a mechanism for more states compliance and allow individual complaints. So I would like to conclude that both the CEDAW and the Maputo Protocol can lead to crucial tools for legislators, policymakers, again, courts, for making sure internationally and domestically that women's voices are not silenced anymore. These results and some helpful and fruitful results more, for example, the promotion of international cooperation, can be achieved through interpretation. So in practice, we don't need to introduce any amendment, and we don't even need to adopt a further specific tool. And in this sense, we can expect some better guidance from the African system, which is very promising. And in practice, some promising guidance and indications have already been provided by the Committee on the EDO. Conclusively, and finally, I would like to say that to suggest this framework may be used for complementing international environmental law, especially because the two areas, these two realities, share two very powerful conceptions for women, namely participation and empowerment. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you so much, Malka.
Thanks a lot, Simona, for restraining yourself for during the period that you have been allotted to, and for your magnificent explanation. So, like, making it really concrete so that we were able to understand everything included in your poster. So, without delaying it anymore, I would like to give the word now to Elena Díaz and Harold Bertot. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. I'm sorry if I'm not. They come from, or they will be joining us from Universidad Rey Juan Carlos, and they will be talking about the differentiated impact on gender, human rights, and environmental impacts. The advisory opinion of the Inter-American Court on Environment and Rights of November 5, 2017. So if you both guys now can turn on your camera. Oh, I see that. I think that we've lost probably Elena now. Just give me a second so that I can verify if we have her online. I think that she's probably, they have had some sort of connection problem. We will try to contact with them through message because they were online and then I saw them and now I don't see them. So if it's all right with Riccardo, we can go on with you, and then we will try to figure out what is going on with them because they were online and now they're not anymore. So Riccardo Montaldo comes from the Università degli Studi di Cagliari, and he will be talking today to us about the role of the human right to water in realizing gender equality. So without delaying it anymore, Riccardo, you can start.
Thank you very much. I would like to start also thanking all the organizing committee and the scientific committee for this opportunity and for the great organization. It's really great. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. So without further ado, I would like to start. You can see everything, right? Okay.
Yes, Riccardo, we're able to see. Perfect.
Okay, okay, just wanted to confirm. So, again, so my presentation regards the human right to water and its role in promoting and realizing gender equality. And the first point that I want to tackle is the nexus, the bond existing between human rights protection and environmental protection, which was also mentioned yesterday in the presentation, in the speech of Professor Morrow. That is to say, the necessity of a human rights-based approach in environmental protection is fundamental, especially regarding the aspects of participation and inclusion of all members of the community, and in particular regarding those facing adversities and that belong to vulnerable parts of the society. Because if these aspects are not tackled at the same time, so if we don't consider both these aspects, neither protection is possible to be fully realized. And this is particularly true for all those human rights, such as the human right to water, which have a direct connection to natural resources. And this connection was also underlined in, of course, in the UN Agenda 2030, but also more recently in General Comment number 36 in 2018. So the second point that I would like to address is the nature of social right of the human right to water. The human right to water is really a fascinating human right because it is a multifaceted polymorph human right addressing so many aspects of social and human life. But I do believe that its most fundamental aspect, its most important aspect, it's its capacity to be a tool, to be an instrument, to fully realize human dignity, allowing each individual to be a participant in ordinary and social everyday life. In particular, those individuals facing adversities again, or belonging to disadvantaged parts of the community or society. In particular, the aspects of participation and inclusion are addressed by the documents you see here on screen, starting from the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women of 1979, which allows us to go to the third point, so the promotion of gender equality, and in particular regarding the protection of women. This convention, indeed, in Article 14, which was also mentioned by Simona in her poster, regards rural women, and this is one of the first steps in the international evolution for the recognition of the human right to water. And all these documents you see here are only a part of it, of course, but they all represent steps in this evolution in the recognition of the human right to water, and all of them recognize the role of women. And in particular, they recognize the role of women in rural areas, in rural societies, or in developing areas of one country, especially, of course, in developing countries. But that's not the only case. A case of in the West world, so to say, is our Roma communities in Europe, for instance. And this of course, has the main goal. So the clear goal is, of course, protecting women, protecting their life, their safety, their health, because it is recognized that they have faced difficulties, they face hardships in collecting water for themselves and for their families. But I do believe, so going back to the second point, so to inclusion, to empowerment, the human right to water and fully realizing human right to water, especially regarding women and women belonging to rural, so living in rural areas or belonging to disadvantaged groups, is a tool for empowerment and gives them the power, gives them the possibility to access other empowering human rights, such as the human rights to work and education. And to conclude, I would like to quote the words of Leo Heller, so which is the special rapporteur, the current special rapporteur on the human rights to water and sanitation. And I quote, "Tackling inequalities in access to improved water, sanitation and hygiene services can be an entry point to addressing other fundamental inequalities, such as those with grounds in gender." So that was it. I hope you could all listen well. I thank you for your attention, and I would love to answer and to deepen the issues in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Riccardo, for your presentation, for remaining in the 5 minutes. It's been pretty good, and for so much for explaining everything in such a short period of time. And we will have a longer period to discuss and talk about a little bit later when we all finish. Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you very much.
So right now, Elena has, just to let you know, they are having some kind of connection problem. So as soon as they can, they will try to connect again. And as soon as they get back, we will give them the word so that they can give their presentation, okay? Continue with the program. It's the turn of Eva María Rubio Fernández from Universidad de Murcia. She will be talking about the Rio Conventions and women. What role for the gender action plans in accomplishing their object and purpose? So, all yours.
Well, I wanted to say, to start, oh my God, my PowerPoint presentation. Sorry, it has closed. Perhaps Carmen Arias could start, because okay, don't worry, Eva. I will ask Carmen right now to see if she can join us right now. So if you can turn on the camera and the microphone meanwhile, while you try to solve the technical inconvenience, and then we will go back. It's here.
Oh, you already have it? So then.
Yes.
Okay. Is it solved? Okay. Yeah. No, Carmen, never mind.
Okay. Sorry.
Don't worry. So it's technical difficulties that we have to experience, given to that we have to make it all virtually. Don't worry at all. So.
Okay. Do you see it?
Yes, we can see it. Yes, perfect. Okay. If you can just put it like in the presentation mode.
Okay.
So that we can see it like a little bit bigger, because you have some of the icons that way. Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Well, sorry so much for my starting. I want to thank also the organizational committee and the scientific committee for giving me the opportunity of exposing my core considerations about which role is to be given to Rio Conventions gender action plans to the achievement of their object and purpose. It is supposed that object and purpose of these treaties will be achieved by accomplishing the obligation established in their text. Although we have to remember that in applying the correlative provisions, the parties also have to respect public international law, and that means, as has been said in the posters before, that they have to respect the transversal principle of equality between women and men, and the prohibition of discrimination on grounds of sex or gender, which are undoubtedly hard law and impose result obligations. Either by the awareness of the impact role of women in that achievement, by the consciousness of the above-mentioned human rights obligations, by the influence of the CBD, whose first Gender Action Plan, GAP, was adopted in 2008, or for other reasons, we face a unique situation. The Rio Conventions, all the Rio Conventions has their respective GAP, and this serves to underline one more interlinkage between these three legal frameworks of action, and it is needed of cooperation. Dealing with several common aspects and issues with some specific provisions, mainly in the case of UNCCD, assigned either to respective parties or secretariats, the 3GAP established that the implementation of these treaties should be gender responsive. This implies that all the processes related to will integrate a gender perspective and ensure appropriate representation of women. In the three frameworks, it has been also pointed out the essential interrelationship between gender-responsive implementation and transformative processes, the ones which are increasingly referred as the way of reaching the objectives of each convention. As it has been said in the previous panel, a clear transformative element is the role of women as agents of change. Having so much common wording and aim in their provisions and being gender a cross-cutting issue, the implementation of these GAPs represents an ideal opportunity for strengthening the undervalued and widely unknown joint liaison group and the coordinated platform, the Rio Convention Pavilion. Established for enhancing coordination between the Rio Conventions and exploring the options for further option, the GLG could be the mechanism for coordinating the action connected to gender, for eluding incoherencies at the horizontal level, for agreeing common indicators and specific measures as quotas, for jointly reporting about the progresses in gender, for instance, biannually, or what could be better, for adopting a joint gender plan of work, as it was provided without the gender in its term of reference. For doing so, it will be needed to overcome the absence of a specific financial resources, the lack of a non-organizational chart, and the operative problems derived from the rotating presidency between the three executive secretariats. Meanwhile, the Rio Convention Pavilion was used as a tool of awareness and sharing information about the latest practices and scientific findings about the co-benefits of the synergies should change its dynamics. For example, for becoming a 4-hour pre-negotiate common actions instead of carry on exploring the silo formula in the programs of its meetings at COPs. Nevertheless, the core question is what happens if parties don't implement the GAPs, and as a result, there is no gender-responsive implementation of the Rio Conventions. Being reporting the only mechanism for control provided, the parties perhaps need to be reminded that if they don't take gender and women and their empowerment into account in planning, decision-making and implementation at all levels in these frameworks, they are violating international law, eroding the state of law, and condemning the object and purpose of the Rio Conventions not to be achieved, with all the dire consequences that arise from that fact, from the planet and humankind. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Eva. Like I always say, for restraining yourself to the period of time allotted and for your interesting presentation. It's been a pleasure listening to you. So I see that Elena is back. So if it is okay with everybody participating, we will try it. I will give her the word right now. I will give them the word right now, so, just in case we have any connection problem later. We can use this. So Elena, I don't know if you were able to hear all the instructions that I gave her. You have already activated your microphone and I see you, so you have your camera on. So you have 5 minutes for the presentation. I don't know if you will be both of you speaking or how you have distributed it. And I will let you know when you have, I will send you a message, but everybody's restraining, so I think that you guys will also do it properly. So without delaying it anymore, I'll give you the word. We have now Elena Díaz and Harold Bertot. I hope that I'm pronouncing it properly. They are from Universidad Rey Juan Carlos, and they will be talking about the differentiated impact on gender, human rights, and environmental impacts. The advisory opinion of the Interim Court on Environment and Human Rights of November 15, 2017. Okay.
Thank you very much, Malka, and also Stephanie, and all the people who organized the event, because it's a pleasure for us being here. So we are going to be very short, very briefly. We are going to explain the main question about this subject. So as Malka said before, we are going to speak about the advisory opinion of the Inter-American Court of Environment and Human Rights of November 15, 2017. And as we said before, we are going just to highlight the main question about this issue. First of all, also, it was not the object of the question submitted to the consultation of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. It is possible to find the concern in relation to gender, human rights and also environmental affectations is some of the reasoning of the advisory opinion of November 15, 2017. Also, we can highlight the importance that the judicial body of the Latin American region in the protection of human rights has role on this issue for a long period of time, we can say it, at the beginning of a line of jurisprudence on human rights and also the environment. In this sense, the Court, in this advisory opinion, takes into account the greater impact that the affectation of rights may have on those groups in vulnerable situations, such as, for example, indigenous peoples, boys and girls, people living in situations of extreme poverty, and also minorities and people with disabilities, as well as on women, for example. Thank you very much, Malka, because we cannot make the poster. Right now, my colleague is going to continue the exposition. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody for this. The Court used the report of the United Nations High Commissioner and report of independent expert to the Human Rights Council, which highlight the risk related to climate change due to gender discrimination, inequalities, and the gender roles that inhibit them. The greatest danger for elderly women and girls during the phases of disaster related to the meteorological phenomenon, among others. The piece reflects the impact of the advisory opinion of the Inter-American system and the possible jurisprudential development within the member states of the Inter-American system for the protection of human rights. Thank you very much.
So in conclusion, even if the advisory opinion was not the main purpose of this advisory opinion to study the impact on gender, human rights, and environmental risk, finally, analyzing this advisory opinion, we could find that the judge of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights spoke about this subject, and it's a subject that matter for them. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, guys, for your presentation and for remaining strict with the time too. And we will, I don't know if until which part you were able to join us before, but we will keep questions and discussion for the end. Okay, once we finish with all the poster presentations, we will open the ground to everybody, to even between you guys, if you want to comment the other presentations, etc. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to continue with Carmen Arias. She is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Peru, and she will be talking about a feminist approach in the climate negotiations. So, Carmen, all yours.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Thank you so much to the organizer for allowing me to present my poster today. It's a truly honor to me to be here in this amazing cohort of researchers. Thank you so much. The idea of this presentation is based on the gender decisions adopted at the COP negotiations at the UNFCCC processes. As Amanda Fadigas has said yesterday, it has been an amazing progress in incorporating the gender dimension in the climate change negotiation. However, all this progress, we don't take it for granted, because it has been very difficult. It has been very difficult to achieve all this progress in the climate negotiation. I would like to base this briefly presentation on 3 points, basically: the evolution in the language in the decisions adopted on climate and gender equality, and the institutional progress on the negotiations and the achievement of climate justice, and also the challenges that we are already facing in achieving climate justice in these UNFCCC negotiations. On regard to the language, if you notice, for example, the standing issues at the COP is only gender and climate change. And negotiations, each word matters. So it was not a minor issue to change the mindset of negotiators from the participation of women and accept to include in the decision text gender equality. This has been a huge step that made possible adopting gender equality perspective in the climate change negotiation. It was a huge step because it allows to include in national actions and also in the UNFCCC structure a gender equality perspective. It was a major change of that. I guess we need to be careful and read behind the lines. And if, for example, if we analyze the decision adopted at COP20 in 2014, it was only have one mention of gender equality in the preambular part. And in the Paris Agreement, it only appears in the preambular part also, because it was not possible to have an overarching paragraph on gender equality in the operative section because it was not possible to get agreement on that, and it was only possible to get a mention on adaptation and on capacity building, but not on finance and mitigation. About the institutionalization of the advancements in gender equality, Roma wasn't built in a day, and the Gender Action Plan neither. It took a long time. It was a process very long to get the adoption of the Gender Action Plan. It was in 2017 that finally we get the first action plan. And it was not casual. For example, that the Doha decision adopted in 2012 was called the Doha Miracle. It gives us a sense of the difficulty it was to progress in the institutionalization of the progress in the UNFCCC to move forward on gender equality. And the gender, for example, since 2014, we still have a gender action focal point on the UNFCCC Secretariat. There are still a lot of challenges to get a sense of climate justice in the UNFCCC negotiations. For example, there is not too easy to get to introduce language on human rights. It's not the decisions on gender equality are not very easy to get consensus. It's very difficult to achieve consensus, and sometimes we need to decide at very last time in negotiations at a very political level. So although there are some reference to multidimensional factors of inequality or to indigenous women, I guess there are still some challenges that we are facing in climate negotiations. For example, as Karen mentioned yesterday, it was still necessary to strengthen the social factors in this negotiation to achieve gender equality and climate justice also. So I guess we still need to work on this regard, and the academia can play a specific role on that, trying to strengthen the links between human rights, climate justice, gender equality, and also to emphasizing the social factors that are part of the climate change. Thank you so much for this time.
Thanks a lot, Carmen, for your presentation and for restraining yourself also to the period of time that we have been granted. So we have only one more presentation left today for this session, and it is Sophia Suarez. She will be talking about gender and climate change. Is the Ecuadorian normative addressing gender equality? So Sophia, you only have to turn on, you already have it on.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
and if you need anything, just let me know. Okay.
Thank you.
Yours. You're welcome.
And I'm happy to be the last one because all the participants before, they already talk a lot about what I'm going to talk, so it will be easier to understand. So I'm not sure if you can be able to.
If you can make it a little bit, yes, zoom it a little bit like that. Perfect. Thank you.
So I will be focusing on how the gender approach has been implemented in the Ecuadorian normative. And actually it's very interesting because it has been said there are many international international agreements that have been already signed by Ecuador, and you can see in this part. So all of them, the previous panelists, they have already talked about them, so I'm not going to go into that. And we have, at the national level, we have the constitution that is, it has been considered as a green constitution because we have many issues regarding the environmental issues, such as it is recognized the right to a healthy environment, also rights of nature, and there are some provisions about the management of natural resources. And then for the first time in 2017, the country issued the Environmental Organic Code that compiles a lot of laws that were regulating environmental issues. And for the first time, it includes a chapter on climate change. But unfortunately, it doesn't include the gender approach for tackling climate change. And on the other hand, we have a law that includes gender approach, and it deals with prevention and eradication of violence against women. So with this international framework and this national framework, there have been some public policies that have been developed. In that sense, we have the National Strategy on Climate Change, Red Action Plan, and the NDCs that are mandatory for all the countries that have signed the Paris Agreement. So in these NDCs and in the Red Action Plan, we can see some provisions for including a gender approach to climate change. And at the moment, for the NDCs, the Ministry of Environment and the National Council for Gender Equality, they are working together to develop a climate change and gender action plan. So it would be soon we will have something that is actually addressing climate change and gender equality. But what is interesting is that even though we don't have included in the Environmental Organic Code the gender approach, there are some laws that have been issued before this code that are actually including the gender approach. They are indirectly, they are dealing with climate change. So we have the Food Sovereignty Law, the Water Resources Law, Rural and Ancestral Lands Law, and the Agro-Biodiversity and Seeds Law. All these laws are based on the principles of equality and non-discrimination that are also the basis for the CEDAT Convention that seeks to eradicate discrimination against women. And also the principle of participation, which empowers women to and permits women to participate in different stages of public policy development. Moreover, the rights that are recognized in these laws are especially the access to land, to tenure of land, access to credits, and all other agricultural inputs. And as it was also established about one of the panelists before, the right to water, the human right to water, with special considerations to women. So the legal implications of this normative framework is that in the end, if it is actually and appropriately implemented, it increases resilience of women against the impacts or events that can bring climate change. As I said, they are addressing indirectly climate change through all this regime to work on agro-biodiversity, for example, and other issues. And it allows the enjoyment of interdependent rights such as the food security, health, adequate standard of living, and others. And also when women are faced to climate change events, it decreases violence against women because they should be more empowered and they should have access to land tenure, for example, and to the resources for healthy food and others. In conclusion, in Ecuador, we have an extensive normative framework. We are addressing climate change and gender from different points of view, from national laws and also public policies, and we expect to have a national action plan on gender and climate change soon. to implement the NDCs. But in the end, there is a need to assess furthermore the implementation of the gender equality principles that are stated in these laws to see and actually analyze if it is increasing resilience to women. So that would be all, and I thank you everyone for the organizing of the event and everyone that has been participating on it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sophia. Thanks for your presentation. It's pretty interesting also to get to know like how like a national or local perspective of within the topic. And so without delaying it anymore, I would like to, we can open the debate part. So we have one comment, and if it's fine with all the presenters, I will introduce, we can open the debate starting with this comment. And then we also have one more question, and probably also promote the discussion between the speakers also, if you have any doubts or anything that you would like to discuss a little bit further and you didn't have time previously to do it, well, now it's the moment, okay? So the first comment that we have, it is from Karen Swanpool. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly, and if she's still online and listening to us. She comments the following: it is great to address gender and human rights issues, but if it has a negative effect on the economy, all efforts are backfiring. We should take the economy as serious as human rights in itself. If there is no business, everybody suffers, especially the vulnerable even more. Please consider applications, as governments are over-regulating it now and killing small business, as it is too cumbersome to comply. I don't know if any of you would like to address or talk about this other aspect of economy.
I would like to, if I...
Perfect, Eva, go
thank
ahead.
you. Thank you for the question, Karen. I think that's the point behind all this, the economy. The economy, I think it's clear, it's the core question in all these debates and dialogues about gender rights, women rights, indigenous rights, and all this, because the economy is quite protected by the governments. In fact, I think that in the dialogue economy environment, that is in the concept of sustainable development, the balance is pro economy, not for environment. And I think that the perspective and that we are trying to do for so long is to change the perspective, because there is no reason to prioritize economy against the other things. We know we need economy. You know, in all the Rio Conventions, in all the gender action plans and discussions and consultations about gender questions, there has been parties talking about, and the secretariats talking about gender budgeting, that is paying attention to women when we are doing a budgeting, when we are planning an economical activity. If we take this prior into account when we design an economical activity, perhaps there will not be so much problem between economy and human rights or environment. And there is also another question. It seems that the economical interests that are being protected the most are the ones of transnational corporations. And transnational corporations has also the obligation to respect the human rights and all these questions and all the provisions about environment and what we are talking about here. Perhaps governments has to pay more attention to people and small businesses than protecting interest of the great transnational corporations that are the ones that are behind of most of the taken at the COPs and about these kind of things. More or less, because for me it's quite difficult to explain myself in English, but These are my ideas. But I want to clarify something. When parties apply international law, international treaties, they have to respect human rights law. This is not a soft law, it's hard law. And they have to take it into account. I know that they are making progresses. It's in all the 3 Rio Conventions, these frameworks, but we have to change perspective. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Eva. We were perfectly able to understand you. I don't know. I would like to ask all the speakers if you can turn on your cameras so that we can have the debate open, and you can probably put your microphone in silence just in case if you have any background when you are not speaking. I don't know if anyone else has something else to comment on this aspect that we have been discussing right now about the effect, or how does the economy, what economy has to do in all this others in this subject.
Well, if I may.
Yes, of course, Riccardo.
I do totally agree with what Eva said. I really cannot say more, only regarding my particular topic, so the human right to water. Again, yes, of course, economy is important. And I mean, there was a huge debate regarding the Dublin principles, especially regarding the 4th principle, recognizing water as an economic good. There was a huge debate. Oh my God, they are saying that water is just an economic good. No, that's not true. Of course, economy plays a role, but it's only in order to grant a deeper ecological perspective. And again, as Professor Moro said yesterday, economic sustainability is only one aspect together with ecological and social sustainability. We have to consider them at the same time. Yes, again, it plays a role, especially regarding water. Water bills, water tariffs have the role of making it possible to grant a continuous water service running, especially for vulnerable people. But then again, it must be socially sustainable as well. So we have many cases. I mean, for all the one of you, or for everybody that has taken some interest in the human right to water at all, one of the most relevant events in its history are the water wars of Cochabamba in Bolivia. And that was an event starting, again, to recall the previous intervention, from a multinational company taking control of water services in that country, and basically charging water bills to everybody at the same price, increasing prices without regard to the belonging to disadvantaged parts of the population. And of course, it resulted in water wars. So, I mean, it's not a mystery that economy is a part of it all, but if it's not balanced with the other aspects, it can only lead to, yeah, to damage. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Riccardo, for your comments. Anybody else that would like to give some feedback on this aspect? Yes, Carmen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, I totally agree with Eva and with Riccardo on that. I think that as Professor Moro explained yesterday, it's important to focus on social sustainability. And I guess, for example, in climate change, more importance are taken on social aspects, for example, on health, on war, on all of these aspects of just transition, for example, and climate negotiations. So, and also there is also since Paris Agreement, we also have a preambular paragraph on a binding text, on a binding document that mention, I know it's not in the operative part because it was not possible to reach agreement about that, but it's on the preambular part, and also gives a kind of framework that the countries have to respect when put in place climate action. They have to respect human rights because they already had obligations on human rights issues. They already have signed documents that are binding. So this is like a reminder to the states. When you apply a climate change policy, you have to pay attention to the social dimension, to the human right dimension, and that's important to remind the countries that.
And following the argument of Carmen, states are conscious of this, because when they go to the human rights bodies to reporting, the human rights bodies ask them about the accomplishment of the human rights obligations in their climate change policy, biodiversity, etc., etc. So it's only that perhaps we have to not to put so much in the economic part. Well, there is an obligation. If we are talking about sustainable development, there will be no sustainable development if we talk only about economy. We have to talk about environment and social aspects, because otherwise it will be not sustainable. For me, it's quite simple. I know that it's difficult for the states because they are quite habituated to capitalism and this, and also with corruption that has been introduced in the previous panel, but it's quite simple. Sustainable development or assistance implies environment, social, and environmental. These are the Johannesburg Declaration.
That's right. We do. It seems like we do have all the tools, but the problem is all implementation, unluckily. Sophia, I have one question for you. It is from Selene. She says that without a doubt, there are relevant advances in gender and climate change in Ecuador. And she would like to know if there are any indicators or methodologies that allow monitoring those proposed goals.
Okay, so
yeah, go on.
Okay, so as I said before, there's still the Ministry of Environment and the Council for Gender Equality. They are working at the moment on developing this plan for action plan for climate change and gender. So I hope that in this document it would be included these methodologies and indicators to evaluate the implementation of the actions that are derived from the commitment that we made in with the NDC. But as Simona, she explained the recommendation 37 from CEDAT, and it also, and other instruments on human rights, they include the recommendation to generate these methodologies and forms of evaluating, like for example, through a gender approach that implies having different data and disaggregated data for men and women. So that's very important, and I think that some things in the government are starting to be done also, for example, in regards to the planning and also in financial issues, also like in the budgets, it is also meant to have these differentiated indicators. But at the moment, as I said, there's nothing specifically, but it is being developed. So probably in the future, we will have something like that.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Sophia. I don't know if anybody else would like to comment anything on that aspect, even though if it's like, if you know of any other, or if you would like to introduce some mechanisms that you know, or any tools that you know that would be probably significant or that could be useful for this kind of generating this kind of information. Nope. So far. Well, guys, in any case, yes, Eva, tell me.
No,
tell me.
Just only a question.
Yes.
As I told in my presentation and my poster, perhaps it is recommended also to governments not to deal only climate change, but also look to biodiversity and land degradation and droughts, because and they know it in the documents of the meetings are these conclusions and recommendations, because if they don't do it, they perhaps has with incoherencies between the plans and the national actions. So they have to go up in the decision making, in the planning, and see all the view,
Excellent.
not only
one aspect.
No?
Perfect. Thank you, Eva. So yeah, I would like to thank all of you, the participants, for your. Yes, Simona, tell me.
Sorry, Malka.
No,
may I just add just a little consideration about Karen's question. It's, well, maybe it does not completely reflect Karen's consideration and remarks, but maybe it could be interesting to recall that some guidance was given by the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. So again, it reaffirms that human prioritized and their protection should be prioritized. But in General Recommendation number 37, adopted in 2018, it has somehow tried to incorporate the economic perspective by protecting and fostering businesses, sustainable businesses that are conducted by women. So this kind of perspective was again reaffirmed through a prioritization of human rights. But somehow we have some clues about the economic aspect. And again, some years ago in 2012, the committee has had the opportunity to address trade. Basically, it highlighted how necessary it is that trade is gender responsive. So as to the CEDAW committee and the framework of the convention, we can have this kind of allocation. Of course, it would be desirable, it would be interesting that the committee and also the African system that has a wonderful mechanism of protection and, for example, both in the Maputo Protocol and in the Charter, in the Bajun Charter, we have very interesting aspects that might be developed further. Somehow, both the court and the commission have made it, but maybe we could expect some insight, develop more in depth about economy and gender. It could be desirable because the tools are very powerful in that system. So just this indication in case, and hopefully end up in day can be interesting for Karen. Thank you so much, Malka.
Thanks to you, Simona. Well, I would just like to thank you all for being part of this panel. It's been really interesting to see how each one of you has been able to, talk about at the same topic, but from a different, even though it's the same perspective, but we have been able to see that we have so many different tools that we have been able to see it through gender perspective, through a human right perspective, and how we have the tool of human rights to implement different, to make it actually effective. We have talked about agendas, we have talked about national plans, we have talked about national law. And what I would conclude personally in this case, and I think that you probably would all agree, is that we actually do have different tools and different mechanisms that could be applied. Some of them binding, some of them not, but it is probably and sadly a problem of a lack of implementation of these mechanisms. But with this, I don't want to disencourage you on your research, no way at all, and not to disencourage ourselves on our studies, because it's also important that we continue working on this sense to recognize the different mechanisms and tools that we already have and discover new ways of implementation, because we probably have material that we can use. And of course, we can develop more and more effective mechanisms, but it is also interesting to understand and how everyone from their different field or their different area within law can be able to apply, and we find tools that can be used in this to understand the gender perspective within all this global issue that we're dealing with right now. And since this is the last session that we have today and the last panel that we have, I would also like to use this little moment to thank not only the panelists from this poster pitch session, but to thank the organizing committee, all the people behind the TIEC. There are some people that have been joining us and with us for the last 5 years, because this is our 5th edition, even though this year we have had, due to the circumstances, to make it virtually. We hope that next year the circumstances change and maybe we can meet all of you again, but here in Tarragona, and meet you personally. We would also like to thank, on behalf of the CEDAT, thanks the CEDAT and Università Rovira i Virgili for all their support always for organizing the TIEC, and all my teammates here at the CEDAT, the people behind the organization and the organizing committee, and all the work that they have put together to being able to carry these sessions online. It has been like, actually, it's different. We have to face different difficulties because it's not the same to organize a seminar or this kind of sessions in person than virtually. And also, we would also like to thank the panelists and also all the people that have been joining us as attendees, people that have been interested. Probably they haven't been able to discuss, but they have been there all the time, listening to all the different presentations and taking part in discussions through questions and different ways. I would also like to remind you that we will be sharing with you a document, because we would like to probably elaborate a document of conclusions, collaborative conclusions. So over there, all of you will be able to contribute and participate and give us some feedback. And we will also send you some kind of a poll where we would like to know, what do you think about the event, how it has been for you? And you can also give suggestions, what things you would probably improve, comment, even suggest topics for the next TIEC next year in 2021. And well, that would be all. On behalf of everybody behind the TIEC, on behalf of all my teammates, I would like to thank you for being here and hope to see you next year. Better if it's in person, and if not, we will continue to do it virtually. But we hope that the situation improves for everybody. So thanks a lot for being here with us. And remember, we have that our email, you can contact us through there or through our social networks, and we will be really happy and pleased to keep in touch with you guys. Thanks a lot. You can activate your microphones if you want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I was looking at Eva saying thank you.
Thank you very much. I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, really.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So,
It was wonderful.
goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye, everybody. Thank you so much,
Bye,
guys.
take care.